Before I get into this story, I just wanted to say that they did provide links to verify this story. This is a story that was submitted 3 years ago. It's one that was featured back then, but I think a lot of you haven't heard it. And it's definitely one of the craziest I've had on the channel. Just figured I'd put that out there. Enjoy the story. On the evening of June 23rd, 2005, my family and I were taking a walk on the west side of Little Falls, Minnesota. It seemed like a normal night, but my family and I learned how things drastically could change in the blink of an eye. I had a pretty normal life as a kid for being a 10-year-old. Nothing unexpected happened very often. I thought this would be a normal night for my family and me, but I couldn't have been more wrong. Since we were on the west side of town, we decided to see if my dad's boss Chuck was at his apartment. He had recently bought an older apartment building so that he could fix it up. We waited outside the large white building, but nobody answered, so we decided to go to Chuck's dealership to see if he was there instead. This is where Chuck kept over a dozen tigers and lions as well as a bear for exotic pets. I was always scared to go there, and I especially didn't like my dad having to work there every day. After arriving, Chuck wanted to show us an owl that he had just recently acquired. His owl was in the same room that the lion, Leo, and the tigers, Georgette, cages were kept. While my dad and Chuck were talking, I wandered out of the room to look for my mom and brother. My dad signaled me back towards the room because he didn't want me to go off on my own. When I walked back into the room, that's when I noticed Chuck holding a hairbrush in one hand and his other hand on the small latch of the black cage's door. I thought to myself, he better not be opening that damn thing. And sure enough, Chuck opened the latch to the cage where the fully grown lion and tiger were together. Even before he could open the door, the tiger shoved the door open and I saw it coming right at me. I remember turning away from the tiger and putting my hand out behind me to shield myself from it. Hearing nothing but shouting, the next thing I saw after that was being on my hands and knees, looking at the floor and seeing nothing but blood rapidly dripping down. At this point, the lion came out of the cage too and bit down on the back of my neck. Then I blacked out again. I woke up to my face and limp body being dragged across the cold cement floor by the lion. I was bleeding out, in immense pain and not able to breathe or move. My ears felt like they were literally on fire. My hearing was muffled along with a high-pitched ringing. When I opened my eyes, it was as if I were looking through a red stained glass window. I could feel its breath flowing across the side of my head and could hear it growling. Sort of the same sound a dog makes when it's excitedly chewing on a new bone. Only this was a lion with my neck. I remember crying and just begging to die or black out so I wouldn't have to experience getting mauled to death. Then, blackness again. I either passed out from my spinal cord being severed or from lack of oxygen. I don't know. I'm just glad I wasn't alert anymore. I was unable to breathe or say or scream anything throughout the attack. After a while, I could hear a guy asking someone if they wanted a ride, and for me to stop biting my lip. Then I heard the sound of being inside a helicopter, and saw a blinding white light when I tried opening my eyes. I'm pretty sure it wasn't the light everyone talks about when they almost die, because it hurt my eyes and it was more annoying than peaceful. It was probably a big exam light on the ceiling or something. My body felt tingly and like I was tightly wrapped in warm, damp sheets. A guy said, "He's awake!" But after that, everything went dark and silent again. The first few times I was conscious, I kept thinking, what the F is going on and why can't I stay awake, say, or do anything? It was scary, and sort of like an Eli Roth horror movie. Nothing a damn 10-year-old should experience. I don't remember anything else until I woke up in the hospital 16 hours later. The first thing I saw was the metal bar to a halo in front of my forehead. I couldn't talk, move, or feel my body, and I just thought, well, this isn't good. I then saw a nurse doing something on the other side of the room, and I tried asking her if my dad was okay since he and Chuck were trying to get the animals off of me. She didn't hear me, and I fell back asleep and woke up a short while afterwards to seeing my mom, dad, and brother standing along the sides of the hospital bed. I was relieved to see my dad there, and I got to directly try asking what happened and if he was okay too. Eventually, everyone understood what I was saying, since I couldn't speak and they had to read my lips. My jaw was wired shut too on top of it all. He said he only had a sore wrist. It was about a month later I found out the whole story of what happened and how I got to the hospital. My dad said, "As soon as Georgette got a hold of you, I was trying to pull her off, then yelled at Chuck to help. He instantly picked her up off of you and put her in the cage. That same effing moment Leo got out and moved you." I was told while my mom and brother were calling 911, my dad and Chuck were rushing me out the door and into the car to go to the hospital. My dad was driving our Monte Carlo at over 120 miles on Highway 10 and Haven Road, as Chuck held me stable the whole 3.5-mile trip there. The attack lasted approximately 5 minutes, plus a 6-minute drive. Upon arriving at the hospital, my dad and Chuck were confronted by an older man, who obviously had no medical experience, insisted that I be put in a wheelchair. Now, we all know not to move somebody if they potentially have a neck injury. It's common sense. I was laying down in the car and being stabilized the entire time. Still not a good idea, but putting me in a wheelchair with little to no head and neck support is one of the worst things that could have been done. It wouldn't surprise me if that contributed to the severity of my paralysis. I was airlifted from Little Falls Hospital to the St. Cloud Hospital, where I was a few minutes before I was airlifted to Hennepin County Medical Center, HCMC, in Minneapolis. I was later transferred to Gillette/Regions Hospital for rehabilitation. Ambulances are useless in this situation, especially this time. The driver only caused unwanted hindrance when my dad went back to pick up my mom and brother and bring them to the hospital. He even had the audacity to say, "Don't hit my ambulance on the way out. I'll have you arrested," to my dad like a little bitch. The police weren't helping either, but that's another story. My hospital stay was about 4 months in total. After spending a few weeks at HCMC, I was transferred to Gillette's Children's Hospital in early July. I spent the remainder of the 4 months there recovering from all of my injuries. The most significant injury I suffered was a fracture of my spine at C1 and C2, which is right below the base of my skull. That alone left me a quadriplegic, paralyzed from the neck down, and ventilator dependent. I also had multiple fractures on my right eye socket, a fractured jawbone on the right side, severe lacerations on my face, neck, and chest. My carotid artery had been torn apart, which resulted in a stroke, and I also endured a subneural hematoma, brain bleed, a tear in the lining of each of my lungs, and air entered the inside of my lining of my heart, causing it to fill with fluid. I really don't understand why I'm still alive. I am a 17-year-old female living in a small town in Eastern Europe with a population of less than 15,000 residents. This story happened last summer. I've had my fair share of creeps, but what I experienced that night tops it all. I am a jogger, and I've been jogging for around 6 years now. It's part of my nightly routine. I live a fairly busy life with school, dance classes, and other activities taking up most of my everyday free time. So committing to a 30-minute jog every evening is a big stress reliever for me. Now, you will probably think this is just asking for trouble, but I always run through the woods. I've never really had any real problems with it, so I continued. Our town is one of the safest in all of Europe, so I've never felt in danger on any of my runs. I've never had a reason to. Until that night. It was a warm summer night. It had been raining the entire day, so when it finally stopped in the afternoon, I was glad to see that I would be able to go on my jog as usual. I put on my speakers and headphones and headed out the door. The time was around 9:30 p.m., and it was already completely dark. The atmosphere was heavy because of the moisture in the air. I began my typical route around some alleyways and then turned on a bike/pedestrian lane that led to the widest and longest spread of woods in our region. I was getting into my tempo and slowing down a bit because the woods were pitch black, and me only having my phone, I didn't want to accidentally trip and fall over some tree root or something else laying on the ground. I was getting closer to about 1/3 of my route when I started feeling uneasy, and my heart started to beat so fast it felt like it was going to explode out of my chest. It was a feeling of knowing that you're not alone, like a sixth sense. I ripped out my headphones and just stood there on the path and listened. Nothing. I began to walk slowly, my headphones still out, trying to calm myself and get back in my zone. That's when I heard it. The second I started putting my headphones back in, I heard the sound of leaves crunching. At that moment, I almost started crying. I sped up and felt like I'm running 100 miles per hour. My heart pounding, my legs becoming like jelly, and my mind just racing all over the place. I wasn't looking at the path below me. I was jumping over huge roots, puddles, just trying to get out of there as fast as I could. I am a fairly athletic girl, but at the time I felt like my legs were gonna fail me. After running at an insane speed for around 15 minutes straight, I finally reached a forest field and saw lights and houses from far away. I gathered myself and tried to make sense of what I heard. I brushed it off by thinking it was probably some big animal that made similar sounds to humans walking on leaves. It was heavy and slow. It was known that those woods were home to deer. But something in the back of my mind was telling me that deer wouldn't make those kind of sounds. I've experienced deer before in these woods, and they're so fast that they barely make any sound when they run, especially because they never approach humans. I tried to stop overthinking it, because it was only making me more scared, and I decided to run to the nearest bench, which was about 5 minutes away and close to some country houses. I made my way over there and sat down. I was in a calmer state of mind, looking at the sky and clouds. The lights from near the bench I was sitting on were lighting up the path and some of the woodland edge. And then came the part that made me almost cry on the spot. I was looking at the field and the forest edge when I saw a tall, dark figure just standing at the forest line. I squinted and tried to get a better look. I thought that maybe it's just a weirdly grown tree or something. I wasn't sure, until the moment that made me run home and leave the place on the spot. Me still squinting and trying my best to see what the weird figure is, it starts to slowly turn and make its way back into the forest. I almost started screaming at that moment. I ran and ran and ran until I got home in an insanely fast amount of time. I locked my house twice and started thinking about how stupid I was running through the forest, not listening to my gut feeling to turn back. Who was that person? What did they want? Were they following me for the entire time? These questions kept me up almost that entire night. How close was I to getting kidnapped? Or worse, killed? It's fair to say that I stopped running that route after this story took place. I'm not going to explain everything, but I'm the second oldest kid out of 6 kids. I have 4 brothers and 1 sister, and my mom has another on the way. In total, there are 6 kids with a fetus growing. We live in a complex and are renting 2 houses. They're not directly beside each other, but they're still really close. In the house I lived in, there was only 3 of us. My older brother Richard, who was 17 years old, me, who was a girl and 15 years old, and my younger brother Sheldon, who was 11 years old. My boyfriend would also sleep over. He stays on the weekend and some weekdays. He is 16 years old. The house has 4 rooms. We only use 2 as the other 2 rooms are for my aunt. On the night it happened, I was in my room with my boyfriend listening to Urmaker. I am a very paranoid person, so normally I can't listen for long. But pills stop me from getting scared. So we listened to him for a while. It made me forget to lock the door. I just assumed Sheldon would lock it as he was always downstairs gaming out. He never locked it. I regret not getting up to lock it. Later on that night, we all fell asleep. We don't know who broke in, so we'll call it a guy. The guy came in while we were sleeping. He was creeping around my house upstairs and downstairs. He had unlocked all the windows and doors, and he even opened Richard's door. We know he was here because he went into my aunt's room and left the window wide open. We never leave windows opened or unlocked. We have a cat named Ziggy who tends to jump out. But even worse, when my mom came over, the front door was left wide open. I never thought this would happen as we lived in a complex. I think he got scared off by Richard. We never noticed anything missing, but today we noticed he had loosened the front door's locks. This story isn't as scary unless it happened to you. It feels so unreal I can't get it through my head that some man who was uninvited was creeping around my house. When my medication stops working at night, I get scared and feel like he will walk up my stairs and harm my family and me. You'll never know what fear you get when some unknown person breaks into your home unless it happens to you. I feel like he had intentions to come back, because everything was unlocked. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the notifications button and tell YouTube you want to be notified for everything I do. Make sure you also hit that subscribe button. And I would also really appreciate if you shared this so we can help the channel grow some more, you know what I'm saying? And if you would like to help support the channel, I highly recommend you check out the sponsor button down by the subscribe button, or even head over to my Patreon page. You can find a link in the description to that. So it's been a while since I've actually done a video dedicated to viewer-submitted stories. And the animal attack story is actually one I've done a long time ago. It's by one of my subscribers that I've had the longest. That story was submitted like 3 years ago. It's one I had previously done, but it was also one I think a lot of you haven't heard, as well as I wanted to redo it, because it's truly a crazy story. And I also want to put out there again that he did provide links to verify it, so that makes it even crazier. I really appreciate everyone checking out this video, and I will catch you in the next one. And just remember, it's always scarier if it's true. I didn't have any bloopers this time, guys. At least nothing that would be funny, and I don't like to force that kind of thing, so sorry to disappoint you. I hope you have a wonderful day though. And I really appreciate you checking it out all the way to the end of the video, because I know a lot of people, they leave immediately as soon as the stories are done, which is cool by me because I used to be like that. That's something I like to try to do, is always try to put myself on the other side of the fence. There's a lot of people that don't listen to the end, there's a lot of people that do. Those of you that do, I really appreciate it. You guys are the true supporters. And the rest of the people, they suck. They just don't know it because they're not even here to hear me tell them they suck. That's the way life is. I'm just kidding. No one sucks, but you get what I'm saying. Yeah. Catch y'all later. Have a good day.